I'm Jim Aiken. In case you don't know who I am, I'm pastor at Heritage Bible Church. And as I met with youth leaders, I offered to just share my story. Most of you don't know much about me, and so I want to share my background and my faith journey, and you might be able to relate to it. I think you can. But first I want to tell you, some of you may relate to this. Growing up, I was always the smallest kid and the shortest kid in class. And so I ended up being picked on over the years, and which was a challenge. But over the years, I learned a couple of self-defense moves that have been helpful over time. How many would like to learn one tonight?
Oh, no, this is what you wanted me to volunteer.
Yeah, Mark, come on up here. Anybody can do this one, okay? It's very simple to do. If somebody's sort of bullying you, basically poking their finger in your chest or whatever, or, you know, or ladies, if some guy's too friendly, and here's a chance to let them know you don't appreciate that. Okay, we're gonna do this in slow motion. Then I'm gonna let you practice it on one another. Okay? No, it'll be very simple. Okay. Okay. Just act. You just take your right hand active as if you're gonna poke me in the chest. Okay. Let's say somebody's doing this to you. Okay. Whatever hand it is, it could be his left hand. You take his hand, you turn it, and you press back this way. The harder you press,
the more it hurts.
Yeah, it really hurts. Let's try the other one. Okay, so if someone's doing that, and you do this, and then you the back of his palm, you press down. You know.
Yeah, no, that hurts.
Yeah. Okay, so I've used this a few times. This is what I want you to do. I want you to pair up with somebody of the same sex, about the same size. Okay, and do this in slow motion. Okay, the idea is not to inflict a lot of harm.
Other way, other way.
I learned that in modern.
Hey guys, go sit down.
Okay. That's a little off the subject, but I thought I'd just toss that in. That was a free one. Okay. So how many learned? How did it right? Okay, you can still practice on one another afterwards. And once you get this is not something you go home and you practice on your younger brother or sister just for fun to torment them. It's only used in self-defense, okay?
Okay, guys.
Said, I was not raised in a Christian home, even though I've been a pastor for 40 years, okay? Wasn't raised in a Christian home. About the only thing I was taught that was spiritual in my home was a prayer my brother and I were taught to say before dinner. That was the extent of the spiritual upbringing in my home. And the prayer was very simple. Maybe some of you have been taught this prayer. This says, God is great, God is good, and we thank Him for our food. That's the sum total of the spiritual training I got in my home. Although my mom did take me and my brother to church. I grew up in Fresno, and so we went to a Methodist church. And every time I'd go to church, I would see my cousins, I would see my aunts, I would see my grandma. But I never, and so I learned it was like a family tradition. But you know what? I never saw my uncles. I never saw my grandpa. I never saw, my dad never came. And so I grew up going to church thinking and learned what I learned from that was, well, church must be for women and children. And I didn't enjoy going, and we went anyway. And for whatever reason, when I was 9 years old, that church gave me this Bible, which I still have. I've never really read it, but I have it. I've kept it over the years, okay? And they gave it to me, and they didn't say anything about it. They didn't tell me where to read or anything. Instead, I just said, okay, thanks. The person who was the real spiritual influence in my life was my grandmother. I don't know if that's the same for some of you, but whenever you went to Grandma's house, she was the one that told us the Bible stories. She is the one that taught us to say the Lord's Prayer. In fact, if you spent the night at Grandma's house, she wouldn't let you go to sleep until you had prayed the Lord's Prayer. So we had to learn it, okay? And being a young kid, you know, you'd say the Lord's Prayer, and then you pray for everybody, all your relatives, all your cousins, all your family, all their pets, you know. And she would put up with that, but we didn't know anything else. So we thought that was what prayer was all about. That when I was 12 years old, my family moved from Fresno to Clovis. And those two cities are side by side. It's like moving from Rio Bravo to Rosedale. You know, one end of town, you're still in the same town. That's what it really felt like. And so the first Sunday we were in Clovis, on the first Sunday morning, my mom gets my brother and I up and says, hey, we're finding a new church this morning. There's a Methodist church in Clovis. And we said, oh boy. And so we went. So my brother and I were each in the junior high class. And so we went into this Sunday school class, and it was the end of the quarter, okay? So at the end of a 3-month study time, and the entire class was taking a quiz on what they had learned for the last 3 months. And we're showing up for the very first time. Now, a smart Sunday school teacher would have recognized here are two visitors to church. They haven't been here for the last 3 months. They haven't studied anything we've studied. You know, they shouldn't be made to take the test. Well, a smart Sunday school teacher was not there that morning. And so my brother and I ended up taking this quiz. And I still remember what the quiz was. Where it was a quiz, I was given a piece of paper with 12 names on it of men I've never heard of. And the teacher said, okay, write down which one of these is a prophet, which one is a priest, and which one is a king. And I'm looking at a list of men I've never heard of, don't know anything about, and I go, this is stupid, you know? And after I got the grade on my test, I felt stupid, you know? And so going to church made me feel stupid. And so my brother, and said after Sunday school, after we got home, my brother and I marched into the kitchen. We told my mom, we don't want to go to that church anymore. They make us feel stupid. My mom looked at us and said, okay, we won't go, which was fine for us. And, you know, she was just going as a family tradition. She wasn't really a believer either, and she still isn't to this day, you know. But here I was in Clovis. I was starting junior high. So I'm starting junior high at a new school. I don't know anybody. It's awkward. It's challenging. At times it was hard. Starting high school was not a great experience. I was not real athletic. I was, you know, wanting to look for acceptance and wanting to be popular. I was bullied by older students. didn't know that defensive movements, other things like that. At times I really battled depression. And early on in high school, I had thoughts of suicide. It was that bad. Some of you may be able to relate to that. And all of a sudden, here I am, I'm searching for meaning in life, and then I remember, oh, I was given a Bible. Maybe the Bible has answers, okay? I did not know anything about the Bible. I didn't know there was an Old Testament. I didn't know there was a New Testament. Nobody ever explained that to me. Let me ask you a question. When you start reading a book, where do you begin? At the beginning. Guess where I began? The very beginning. What's the very beginning of the book? What's the name of the book called? Genesis. You guys are sharp. And I don't know anything about the Bible. So I open it up, and I want to tell you, for somebody who doesn't know anything about the Bible, the first few chapters of Genesis are really pretty interesting. If you've never read them, you get to read about the creation account. You're reading about a naked couple running around a garden. They're running around, they're naming animals. Next thing you know, you have one brother killing another brother. There is a lot of drama here in the first few chapters of Genesis. And I'm going, well, this is pretty interesting, you know? And then I get to Genesis 5. And that's, I see you're getting excited too. See? Now you want to go home and read Genesis. Well, I get up to Genesis 5. Anybody know what Genesis 5 is? Genesis 5 is the first genealogy. Adam was the father of so-and-so, who was the father of so-and-so, who was the father of so, the whole chapter. And here I am reading the Bible for the first time. I get to Genesis 5, I last about 5 verses, and I say, this is really dull. And as a teenager, I put the Bible down and decide the Bible is boring and irrelevant, and I don't pick it up for years. And I figured, hey, I've tried reading the Bible. You know, it's not relevant for my life, you know. So I start my sophomore year of high school, and I decide, well, I'm going to become popular by playing football. I love playing football. There's only one problem, okay? I am 5 feet tall and 100 pounds, and I'm a little slow. And so I decide I'm going to work out all summer. And so I ran, I got in shape, I lifted weights, and after 3 months of working out, I was 5 feet tall and 100 pounds. And I'm going out for football anyway. I played tackle football in junior high. So I went out, I'm the junior varsity team or whatever, and we do a week of conditioning, and then the following Monday we start the first day of contact sports, okay? And like an idiot, I show up, got all my gear on, and I forgot my mouthpiece. Oh. Well, I'm not gonna look wimpy, I'm gonna get out there and do it anyway. And I go through the first few drills, and then we do one simple drill where it wasn't even hard contact, but the guy, you know, bumped up against underneath my chin. And it didn't hurt, but it, you know, we rolled over and I got up, and all of a sudden I felt something in my mouth. And I didn't know what it was. And I reach in there, and it's a tooth.
Oh my God.
And my mouth didn't hurt. You know, it didn't hurt. It just sort of popped out. And the other surprising thing, my mouth wasn't bleeding. So I'm feeling fine. But I'm walking around, I got this tooth. They don't have a pocket in the pants. I don't know what to do. Maybe they're starting a new drill. And so I just tossed the tooth off to the side, you know, somewhere on the ground, you know, and I kept going on with practice. You know? But pretty soon, after a few more contact exercises, my mouth starts bleeding, and I start spitting out blood. And I've got blood dripping off my face mask, you know, and walking around, guys are looking at me, you know, and, which is really cool. And now they were a little concerned. Finally, a coach saw me. One of the coaches said, Aiken, man, what happened to you? You know, because I'm one of the smallest guys on the team. Well, you know, I told him, I lost a tooth, and, you know, he stops practice, gets the whole team, on the ground. They're all on their hands and knees. Hey, we're looking for Aiken's tooth. You know, they're all, finally somebody found it. They handed it to me. I called my mom. She came, picked me up, took me to the dentist. My dentist jammed it back in.
Not even sanitary?
He cleaned it off. What? He cleaned it off. What he did, he drilled a little piece of metal in so he could jam it into my jaw and have it stick. It hurt a lot more going in than coming out. Okay. And so the dentist did that, and, you know, and he said, okay, you can't have any contact for, you know, no contact in football for 6 weeks. That was the end of my football career. But so I sat there, but I had worked out all summer. I was in good shape. I noticed I had some friends who were on the cross country team. And I said, I'm going to try cross country because I was in shape, and so I joined cross country. I ended up doing cross country in high school and soccer, because you run a lot, and track and field, did, you know, long distance there too. I learned that I could do sports where if I was involved in sports where you run away from people and you don't have contact, I did a lot better, okay? I mean, I still love football, but decided that wasn't for me. Then my junior year in high school, I was active in long distance running, but I still felt this emptiness inside my life. I was still battling depression from time to time. You know, I ended up lettering in sports, but in cross country, but still, you know, there was something missing in my life. And there was a girl I was dating at the time invited me to a campus life meeting, and it was at somebody's house one evening. She said it would be a lot of fun, and it was. So I went, showed up. They're doing a lot of crazy games like the one you guys did tonight. So I did a lot of games like that. I had a good time. It was a fun evening. And when the evening was over, the girl asked me if I wanted to come back next week. And since I wanted her to like me, I said, yeah, sure, I'd love to come back. The only thing she didn't say was, at that time, Campus Life would run a meeting one week. It was all fun and games. The following week was a Bible study. So it was fun and games, Bible study, fun and games, Bible study, all through the year. So I show up the following week ready to play fun and games, and we're doing a Bible study. And I go, oh. And so I felt tricked into coming to this meeting, you know. And then they said, oh, we're going to study the Bible, and I'm going, oh. And I'm thinking, I studied the Bible once, and it was boring. You know, this is going to be terrible, you know. And so, but the thing that was so surprising, they're all reading from a Bible that is easy to read and that is easy to understand. I didn't know a Bible like that even existed. It was called the Living Bible. Anybody know what a Living Bible is? Okay, or have one? Okay. The Living Bible was originally written by a man. He wrote the Bible for his children so they would easily understand it. That's a Living Bible. I didn't know that even existed. And so all of a sudden, I'm reading from a Bible in language I can understand this. Then the next thing that shocked me was different students started talking about how verses in the Bible related to their life. I had never heard anybody talk like that. You know, I was shocked. Here people saying, well, this is how I apply these verses. I'm going, whoa. And I'm thinking, maybe I should think about, you know, what the Bible has to say. Maybe it has something for me. You know, that was a shock in itself. So going to Campus Life and being part of that group was a really positive experience for a teenager looking for meaning and acceptance and things like that. And as I thought about it, the students at that Campus Life Club accepted me as I was and loved me. And I didn't have to do anything to earn that. In all my other relationships at high school, I felt as if I had to do something to earn other people's approval. I don't know if you ever feel that way with certain students, but that's how I felt. But when I went to Campus Life, they accepted me as I was with my questions and concerns, things like that. And just the way they made me feel. You got a sign over here. You belong before you believe. That was my experience when I was 16 years old, going to Campus Life. Because that group helped me belong, I was open to their beliefs, which was shocking. Because as I try to think back, I don't remember what anybody said. I don't remember any Bible lessons that were taught. But the one thing that I do remember is how that group made me feel. And they accepted me, they loved me. I was part of the group, and so I was open to their beliefs. And so one afternoon, I'm driving around in my parents' Volkswagen Bug, and I'm driving around Clovis, and I'm thinking about my experience, and I'm thinking about my life, and thinking about, I'm looking for meaning in life, and is there hope, and things like that. And I started thinking about my friends at Campus Life. And I said, I said to myself, this is my thinking, I said, you know what I'm really looking for, my Christian friends in Campus Life have. And I started thinking, why is that? I go, well, they all have God in their life. And I made this conclusion as I'm driving around town. I said, if they're that way because they have God in their life, then I want God in my life too. And I realized, here I am telling myself that. And all of a sudden I said, Jim, if you want God in your life, you should probably pray. So I'm telling myself that. And I'm thinking, okay, Lord, yeah, I know I need to pray. Then the next question comes up, and you have to understand this from somebody that doesn't know anything. Where should I pray? I didn't know you could pray anywhere. But in my limited understanding, I'm thinking, well, if I'm going to pray, where does God hang out? You'll find God at church. And I'm driving around Clovis. I said, well, I need to pray. I want God in my life. I need to find a church. And I only knew one church in town. Guess what church that was? The Methodist church that I hated, okay? And this is the middle of the afternoon. I said, okay, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, that's where God is, that's where I'm going. So I drove to the Methodist church in Clovis, pulled into the parking lot. This is like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I walk in, amazingly the church is unlocked. And I walk into the foyer, I walk past a secretary who just stares at me, doesn't say anything to me, for which I'm really glad. And I walk through the lobby, I walk into the sanctuary and I sit down. And I pray. It was a really simple prayer. It wasn't flowery or anything. I said, God, I need you in my life. I want you to come in. And I knew enough to ask for forgiveness because Grandma had taught me the Lord's Prayer. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. So at least I remembered that part of the prayer. So that was my prayer. And I got up and I walked out of that church. And I want to tell you, as I opened the door and walked out, there was like a huge weight just lifted off my shoulders. And as I walked out into the parking lot, I want you to know, there was a peace I experienced that I had never experienced before in my life. Never. And I'm going, whoa. And all of a sudden, I knew God was real. I knew God had come into my life. Let me tell you what I did not know. I didn't know, believe it or not, I did not know I had become a Christian. See, I thought I was a Christian. I already, before I did that, I thought I was a Christian because I had gone to church as a kid. I even had a Bible. And I believed in God. But I wasn't a Christian. It wasn't until I prayed and said, God, I want you in my life. That may be some of you. You may be here, you read the Bible, you may believe in God. But until you've invited him into your life, you're not a believer. You don't have a personal relationship with God. God will not be as real to you. God's just maybe somebody you believe in your mind. So that made a huge impact in me, you know. And I want, you know, a lot of people will say, oh, when did you become a Christian? Oh, February 21st at 4:30. And I can't tell you that. I know I can tell you, you know, when I prayed that, when I walked into that Methodist church and prayed, it was April of my junior year in high school. That's all I remember. Okay? So I'm content to know that. So that's April of my junior year. That was life-changing. 2 months later, I end up going to Germany for 8 weeks as a foreign exchange student. That was something that had been arranged months before I became a Christian. And when I applied to be a foreign exchange student, I said, not religious at all. you know? So they put me with a family that's not religious at all. And so I'm a brand new Christian. I'm going to Germany. I've had 1 year of German, which allows you to count to 10 and say the alphabet. But you can't really carry on much of a conversation. So I am 17 at that time. I'm living with a German family, and I have a German brother who has hair down to here and a beard, and he's really cool. And then we would hang out, we would do stuff together. I met all of his friends. I had had 1 year of German. I couldn't carry on a conversation with people. But you know what I learned? My German brother and all of his friends, they had had 6 or 7 years of English. And they all wanted to practice their English on me. And I said, that's fine with me, you know? I spent 8 weeks in Germany. I didn't learn any German, you know? I couldn't walk down the street and carry on a conversation. They all practiced their German on me, and I love doing that. But my German brother, who's 19, he went to school 6 mornings a week. He'd get in his Volkswagen bug, and he would drive 25 miles to go to class, and then he'd come home. And so every morning, I had a lot of time on my hands. And I didn't know what to do. I would go jogging once in a while, but I couldn't walk down the street and carry on a conversation. I couldn't even carry on a conversation with my German parents. My German brother, I could talk with him. But even not with my German mom, who was there at home. So I had plenty of my time on my hands. I had taken along with me a New Testament in a Living Bible, okay? And I said, hey, I've got time, maybe I'll start reading my New Testament. Guess where I started reading the New Testament? Matthew. Matthew's the very first book of the New Testament. And so I started reading. What are the first 4 books of the New Testament called? What are they called? They're called the Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Each of them describe the life of Christ and his ministry. I didn't know that. I just started reading one right after another. And I'm like in the middle of Luke, and I'm going, whoa, haven't I read this before? You know, I've read this parable before. I've read this teaching before. I wrote to my friends at home, said, hey, I've started reading the Bible. There's a lot of stories that are similar, you know, and I didn't know I was reading the Gospels. Nobody told me that. I'm just reading the first few books of the New Testament. They were sort of long. I was glad when I kept reading. I was glad I got to some shorter books. I started in Matthew. I went straight through to Revelation. I read the entire New Testament in 3 weeks because I had the time. And that changed my life. Reading the Bible in 3 weeks, the New Testament, probably changed my life more than anything I've ever done in my life as a Christian. That was dynamic. I came home and went through my senior year, and that just directed me in ways that were great. My life in Germany was really simple. I'd read the Bible for an hour or two every morning. My German brother would come home from school, we'd have lunch, and we lived in a little tiny town, but for some reason they had this huge public swimming pool. And so he and all of his friends, we'd meet there, we'd swim every afternoon. So I'm reading the Bible for a couple hours in the morning, swimming for a couple of hours in the afternoon, and every evening I'd get together with my brother and all of his friends, and we'd go have to a pub and drink a beer every night. Now I'm 17 years old. I was in heaven. I just want to tell you. Now you have to understand, in Germany, drinking beer, that is just part of the culture. Children drink beer, everybody drinks beer. And when I went to Germany, I was told they don't believe that tap water was safe. They'd rather, and one morning, I was just thirsty for some water, and they told me the water's safe, but Germans didn't believe it was good for drinking. They believed water was only good for bathing. But one morning I was thirsty for water, and I took a little bit. My German mother caught me. I didn't know what she said, but she was not happy, you know? And so it just reinforced the fact, you know, she got mad and started handing me orange juice and beer, and I said, oh, no, go, sorry, you know. And but that was part of my life. Let me tell you a little bit about my own family life and background real quick, just in terms of alcohol, just so you understand. Because I've seen alcohol used and abused in my family. And this is part of my background. I grew up in a family, non-Christian family, unbelievers, parents that don't know the Lord, and they drank, okay? My whole life growing up, every day my parents are drinking, but I never saw them drunk. So I always saw them drink, but they drank responsibly. There were parties that they held where my brother and I were bartenders. They taught us how to make drinks for people. And so I grew up in a family that drank, but they never got drunk. They were just responsible. When I hit high school, I had a chance to party with my friends, okay? Maybe you've been invited to do that. But I remember one time I was invited with some guys, it was winter. I was gonna go to a basketball game that night, and I had some friends say, hey, you wanna come with us? You know, around the high school I was at, there were vineyards. And they said, we're gonna meet at a certain time, we're gonna go sit out in the vineyard, sit in the dirt where it's cold, and somebody's bringing a gallon jug of wine. We're gonna sit in the dirt and pass around a gallon jug of wine. Do you wanna join us? And I thought about the lure of that. I'm thinking, boy, maybe I'll drink enough and throw up. You know, and I'm thinking, no, I don't think I wanna do that. And so I was close enough with my mom. I told my mom I had been invited to go do that. And you know what my mom said? I'm so grateful for this. Here's a non-Christian mother. She looks at me and says, Jim, you've been in our house. You know that we drink. And she said, listen, if you ever want to drink, come ask us. We'll let you. You know where all our alcohol is. You can have a drink. And just by her saying that, I was never tempted to go out with my high school friends and go drinking. And in my house, whenever it was your birthday, you got to choose to either go to a restaurant or mom would fix your favorite meal at home. On my 15th birthday, my mom said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I want you to fix this meal. And then I said, and before dinner, I want to sit down in the patio with Dad and have a beer. And my mom said, okay, that'd be fine. So for my 15th birthday, then my dad sat on the patio, we had a beer, and then we came in and had my birthday dinner. So I grew up that way, you know. Drinking was part of their life and doing it responsibly. My brother, who was 18 months younger than I, he grew up, he ended up becoming a winemaker in Napa Valley with a very successful career. And he still does that, he's still up there, okay? But I saw alcohol tear my family apart too. And that's part of my life, because when my dad retired, he retired early, like 55 years old, just because he had a chance to retire because the company wanted to get rid of management, and so they offered him 2 years worth of salary if he would retire. He said, he didn't think twice about that. Said, I'll take it. He walked out the door and didn't have a plan for what he was gonna do for retirement. And he came up with projects around the house for about a month, and then he didn't know what to do with his life. For a lot of men who retire, if their job is their identity, and they no longer have a job, they no longer have an identity or purpose in life. I know you don't have to worry about that, but that's what a lot of men face. So my dad started drinking heavily, you know, and drinking to the point of abuse. And finally, my mom couldn't take it any longer. So my mom went to my dad one day and said, listen, you have two choices. Either you stop drinking or we're gonna get a divorce. And my parents had been married for 35 years at this point. My dad was confronted with those choices. My dad looked up at my mom and he said, well, guess we're getting a divorce. Drinking alcohol was more important to my dad at that point than keeping the family together in marriage. And so I saw them divorce, which didn't surprise anybody, you know. And that changed, you know, our family life in many ways from that point on, okay? So I wanted to give you, that's part of my background. And so I've seen alcohol used, I've seen it abused. But when I was your age, in Germany, reading the Bible and loving God and fellowshipping every night and loving a can of beer. That some of you are gonna go home and say, you know the pastor when he was 17 drank beer every night? Don't go home and tell your mom and dad that, you know? They're gonna say, what type of youth group are you going to, you know? But that's part of my background in life, okay? So, listen, as we wrap things up, I just want to challenge you. I mean, that's who I am. That's part of my background. Some of you may be struggling and questioning your own purpose in life, or struggling with depression. Maybe some of you have even thought of suicide. I don't know. You can talk to any of the youth leaders. We'd love to pray with you. There may be some of you who sit there and you can relate to me, you know, because you're in youth group and you believe in God and read the Bible, but you don't know if you have a personal relationship with God. Talk to any of the youth leaders. We'd love to share with you and pray with you about that, okay? So you may be able to relate with that. Okay. Let me close in prayer and then tell you what's going to happen next week, okay? Let's pray. God, I thank you that you love us. God, even before the world was created, you chose to adopt us into your family because you loved us. And you sent your son, Jesus, to die on a cross, that we could be forgiven and become members of your family. Lord, I pray for students here who may be questioning their purpose in life. Students who they're wondering about meaning and value and whether life is worth continuing. And Lord, I just pray you'd help them understand how much you love them because you died for them. Lord, I pray for students who may be here and realize that they may be going through the motions, believing in you and reading the Bible and being part of youth group, but maybe they don't have a relationship with you. And I pray they'd be honest and admit that and be willing to just finally come to the point of saying, Lord, I need you in my life, and just invite you in. Lord, we thank you that you love us and you care for us. Thank you for the chance to just be here, and thank you that we can belong to one another and belong to you really before we come to a point of believing. I thank you for that in Christ's name. Amen. Okay. Imagine this scene. Imagine you were driving in a Honda Accord. You're doing maybe 30 or 40 miles an hour. You're going through a little small town, and there is a lady in a Chevy Blazer who is late for work, doing 70 miles an hour. She's coming the opposite direction. She loses control and hits you head on. That was my experience 30 years ago. Totaled my car, broke bones in 10 places. Next Wednesday night, I'm going to talk about that experience. That has changed my, in addition to becoming a Christian, that event has probably changed my life for the last 30 years. And I'm going to talk about how I got through that and what helped me avoid depression and survive that. Because I was in a hospital bed for 3 months, and then I spent 5 months learning to walk again. And I'll even show you pictures. I made the front page of the Los Banos newspaper, which is not a big thing because it only comes out once a week. But that was the biggest news in town that week. So that'll be next week, okay? Okay, thanks so much. Any questions?